Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Gentleman, Season 1, Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we're immediately picking up in the aftermath of last episode. You got to give props to Jethro, just as everything went down, and I love how that sequence was kind of like edited the way it was. But then also like Jethro, the moment he takes off his headphones, turns around, sees Tommy's dead body. He looks at them, it's kind of looking at the dead body. Couple seconds, he's like, pretend like he's zipping his mouth, saying, Zippo, you don't have to worry about me. Hey, Tommy was a dick. I'm like, got to give him mad props. Didn't even freak out or anything. Didn't go, oh my god, please don't. It's like, nope. He was just saying like, hey, he was super calm and collected, and then he took off running. It's like, at least he sold it for a little bit, and then it leads to this whole chase sequence where I love that, obviously, you already knew what time it was with Freddy, because Freddy sees Jethro running, he sees Eddie after him, and it's like, immediately reloads the shotgun and goes after it. We see him later on an ATV, but yeah, while doing the search, I love that Eddie runs into Jeffrey and is like, all right, what are we looking for? It's like, doing a blue jumpsuit, and they all go three separate ways. Jeffrey didn't ask too many questions, because once again, he already knows what time it is and what involvements they have. It's like, are you looking for something? Some crap must have gone down. Like, there's no, like, because he wasn't nearby, at least it doesn't seem like he was. It's interesting to know, like, well, we know there's at least 20 staff members that were on the grounds, was at the manor and stuff like that at the time. Plus his mom was upstairs asleep, so I'm like, how did none of that get heard? I guess the walls are thick and it is a massive place, so yeah, upstairs might be pretty far upstairs and room, and maybe mom's medicated to help her go to sleep type of situation. I don't know. Either way, they eventually catch up to Jethro. Kind of knocked the wind out of himself twice. One time he busted himself in the face and busted his nose. Then the second time he just like took a log to the chest as he like crawled under it. So yeah, and Jeffrey was there waiting for him. Was like, cool. Just dropped the phone. Freddy was ready to kill him, but Eddie stopped and he's like, you've done enough damage for one day, Freddy. So, but he did get off a text, and it turns out the text is the title of the episode. What was it? I forgot what the title of the episode now. It's something Tommy Woo Woo. That autocorrect is a bastard, isn't it? But either way, it turns out the person he was texting was Tommy's brother, the Gospel. Which, once again, there's something creepy about like a gangster or a bad guy who's also uses religion. That's like, I don't know, there's something extra crazy about that, where it's like, here you are, like, killing and burying people, and you're here reciting gospels and stuff from the Bible or something. It's like, there's some extra layer of evil to that or something, you know? But it's like that you use it to justify it, and you look at yourself as some avenging angel in some shape or form, kind of doing the Lord's work, I guess. I don't know what the justification is. It just makes the gospel look like even more like a lunatic. I mean, going as far as calling yourself the gospel, there's also Jesus, but not Jesus, but there's someone in the organization Jesus. Because it's interesting, because like Tommy's actually a low end of the totem pole when it comes to the organization, which is interesting. Considering your brother's in it, you'd think you guys would be pretty high up. But I guess Tommy doesn't, I guess, because I was under the impression like Tommy ran the organization with his brother. It's like, no, he's pretty low on the totem pole. And I guess his brother's in the mid-range. It's like, yeah, he's higher up, but he's not like upper echelon in the organization. I think Jesus, as Jethro was referencing, is kind of someone higher up in the organization. I think the gospel is just kind of middle management to some extent. Maybe that's kind of his position, so it's just still interesting. I guess it's like, maybe that just speaks about Tommy, like like who he is and what he's able to do. He needs to be on the lower end because he's kind of like the hands-on person. One of my favorite bits in this episode is the Errol bit, where he's just constantly referring to like, the first one was when it's like, oh yeah, Jethro sent this ambiguous text. It's like, what was it? What? How was it ambiguous? What do you mean ambiguous? Well, ambiguous means he's like, no, no, I know what ambiguous means. What is the context of the text? And how is it? I love that. And there's an example later on. He says something. He's like, no, I know exactly what that means, Errol. I love that being a bit. I hope we get more of that throughout the show. I hope that does become like a recurring bit every time Arrow and the Gospel are around each other talking, that some word gets used and he's like, well, this is what it means, sir. It's like, I know what it means, you idiot. I hope there's at least one time where Arrow does it because it's like, oh, the Gospel actually doesn't know what it means, or maybe he actually does get the meaning wrong. I could also see this being in a gangster type of way where he gets tired of Arrow's bullshit and correcting him and ends up killing him type of thing. Maybe not. Maybe I'm thinking way too in advance, but it's just like, it feels like that could be a bit that could stretch out and then like have a twist to it at some point. Either way, Susie calls in her fixer to handle this whole situation because they are trying to get rid of Tommy's body. They want to get rid of Jethro too, but for Eddie, it's like, no, we don't have to. Especially because he spent a little time talking to him and finding out like, oh, Jethro just kind of got mixed up in this organization. He didn't know it was the cutthroat lunatic organization that it is, but it turned out to be what it is, and you can't really just leave however you want to. So Eddie's cutting him some slack. Granted, you never know how much of that was true, because as we've seen, Jethro lied at least once or twice throughout the episode about things. It could also just be a circumstance of one of those instances you can make, well, maybe he legitimately did forget where he put something, but there's one obvious lie when it's like, oh, do you live with someone? He's like, no, and there was a dude in the apartment. Not unless that wasn't his roommate. It's like, you would assume he'd have to be, because it's like, well, how else are you inside the apartment? How else are you in the flat? Because we are in the UK. But I'm about to say, not unless it's someone from the organization that the Gospel sent there, but it's like, well, the door wasn't like busted open or something, so not unless they have a spare key or they just broke in, but because also Eddie never got on Jethro's case about it later on. It's like, oh, you didn't tell me about your roommate. We didn't get that scene at all, so it makes me go like, maybe he actually doesn't have a roommate. Maybe that was someone the Gospel sent there to keep an eye out for Jethro, because it's like, well, he has a place, so if he's going to try and go back anywhere, maybe it might actually be home, so he had someone staking the place out. But it feels like that was a roommate situation, but maybe, I don't know, like the fact that Eddie didn't jump down his throat about him being lying about it, that would have, I mean, because to me, from the precarious situation that they're involved in, to me, Jethro lying about that kind of makes you want to swing to the other side of the pendulum of, hey, dude, I'm looking for any excuse. I'm trying to give this whole situation every excuse to not kill you, and you lying to me, set me up like that, might make me more inclined to agree with the rest of the group that you need to die. So, but we didn't get that, so it makes me question, like, who that guy was. But maybe, once again, maybe I'm just, like, overthinking the whole thing, but either way. I love when we, circling back, getting into the meat and potatoes of it, like, Felix. I do love that he's like on the out drinking. I'm wondering what that's about. Is that just his everyday life, or is he drinking something away? Like, was there something, like, it was like, did you go through a breakup or something? Like, what's going on? Because you're lying, being like, yeah, I sound the way I do because I just got out of bed. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to get over there. Oh, here's the stuff I'm going to need. And he's so drunk he can't even close the garage without, like, bumping into his own head. But yeah, they get there. It seems to be in better condition. Very smart about it. Got the hazmat suits and everything. It's like, cool, we're going to cut the body out. Which I love Jeffrey being like, okay, question, why do you need to cut the body up into pieces? It's like, well, for one, smaller hole you have to dig. Plus, with the organs exposed, it increases the rate of deterioration for the body. Decomposition, which I'm like, interesting. I've watched quite a few crime dramas and stuff. Never heard that before. Like that specific reasoning of like, you want to expose organs. I've never heard that before. That being like, oh, I've never heard that explained before. Not saying it's never been said before in a TV show or a movie. I've never heard of it, at least not that I think about it. I mean, cutting it up in small pieces, it sounds so effed up to say, but like, from a gangster covering up crime type of thing, like, I can understand the reasoning for that. But yeah. I even love that Felix is like, yeah, I go about things a very holistic approach because it's like, right, you bury the body, put some earth and dirt and lime over it, and then you basically put some compost on top of it. It's almost like it's kind of like, oh yeah, let something kind of grow on top of it. Or like let something grow from it. That's what he means, like go from it like a very holistic approach. It's like instead of burying someone in a casket in the ground, you bury them under a tree so they're nutrients for the tree. I think it's kind of that approach considered a quote unquote holistic approach. But yeah. But Eddie has a different approach to the situation. It's like, cool, how about we do this instead? We set it up to make it seem like Jethro and Tommy got into an argument. Jethro killed Tommy and ran off with the money, and we'll make it so that the gun is left behind with the body, and it looks like, oh, Jethro took the money and ran. And we'll also have this video of Freddy doing the chicken dance that he was supposed to do last episode. We'll actually put it in on the phone and put it in Tommy's pocket. So, but I love that, like, Susie's rebuttal to that was kind of like, oh yeah, why don't we like have him basically go off to like be with Santa and have an all new career as an elf. It's like, yeah, like what you're doing is selling some bullshit. Like, yeah, like my option is just as, viable as yours, but it's like, yeah. I also love the bit about Jimmy being the one that watches him, and then he's like, wait, can I go to the bathroom? I have to do my work and all that. She's like, oh no, like you'll figure it out, love. You use your brain, you'll figure it out. He's like, I don't know about that. I actually need very specific instructions. I'm like, Jimmy, I think I'm gonna really, really like you, Jimmy, because you seem like the idiot, and I love you. I also love the situation with their mom. That was an interesting development. The reveal that like the mom was playing dumb the entire time. I'm like, oh, who are you, Susie? Oh, you're an antique dealer, but you're helping my son Freddie, who now miraculously wants to help chickens, because that's why he's in a chicken suit, because it's about some charity for like the treatment of chickens at like farms and stuff like that. But then she later on talks to Eddie. Apparently, she knew the entire time. I think it's so wild that the mom is so copacetic of like, she's like, oh, be careful. But she's just like, well, I'm going to go out. It's just like, okay, you dropped the bomb on me that you knew and you kept it away from me because you're like, oh, it's your father's business. And, we all benefited from it because like he's come from a perspective of, Eddie's like, I'm going to like get rid of them out of our lives. And she's like, oh, good luck with that, but make sure you're careful, honey. It's like, and she's just so cavalier about it and just bounces afterwards. I'm like, what? Like, there's no like, that's not the more typical, response. I don't know if that's just kind of like, we've been a part of this for so long. Who cares? I'm just the cavalierness is what threw me. I'm like, that's not the typical or stereotypical mom response, but maybe it's because we're dealing with like the 1%, and it's like they're going to act a little different in that circumstance compared to other people. Considering everything that's going on, they haven't all had like the most normal of reactions. Eddie's kind of handled this a lot more calmly than you think he would. Maybe it takes, being a soldier, you're used to being in high stressful situations, and this is a stressful situation that isn't just on you. Your life isn't on the line, your entire family, your brother, it's not even going to jail type of situation. It's your brother will most likely get murdered and your entire family will get murdered. So you kind of got to get this right. And so you got to be like you can't drop the ball type of situation. And plus you have Freddy who's like blitz out of his mind because he's still riding the high of last episode. But either way, they set up a meeting with the gospel and he knows something's up, but he can't quite put his finger on it. They're like, right, Jethro and Tommy, they've never argued. It's like, yeah, but the process was taking too long and Tommy was getting impatient. And it's like, oh, that kind of fits Tommy's MO and stuff. So they're kind of buying the story, but then the gospel has this weird moment where he stops, and I was like, when he stopped and kind of was staring up, I'm like, did he just get possessed by Jesus? Like, I was about to say, like, does he have like is Jesus like his other personality? Because I was thinking like Jesus was a separate person, but I'm like, we're going to find out Jesus is actually like a split personality of his. It's like, no, he just felt this energy where he was like, yeah, my brother's spirit is no longer in his body. I'm like, I don't know if we're going to find out like, I don't know if that was him screwing with them, like creating this idea of like, oh yeah, like I feel it, or is it just like, are you is that serious? Like, do you believe that, or are you just fucking with them because you're like, I can smell bullshit, and you're fucking with me, so I'm gonna fuck with you back. And so it's like, oh, let's kind of pray, and everything's. Oh God, there was also that bit beforehand about like, oh, does anyone have anything to confess? And all of his boys put up their hands, including Errol, and it gets to Freddy, and Freddy's like, yes, I killed someone, and he references a cat, and he's like, I was looking for that cat for like 2 weeks. He's like, yeah, I'm sorry, I wanted to see if it would swim. He's like, this was like 25 years ago. It's like, yeah, but it's like, what else the other things have you done? He's like, well, I fingered that housemaid that you really like, and it's like, Freddy, just stop. But it seemed like the gospel was buying the story. They had to go through even larger lengths later on when it turns out that, right, they're trying to get, Eddie's trying to get Jethro's passport, ends up going to the apartment, and because at least he did the right thing of he listened first, because I was like, please don't go to the door immediately, because I was like, you could tell this is going to be either a setup. There's going to be some bullshit going on here, because there's no way there's not going to be someone in this apartment waiting for you. So at least he was listening. I was like, at least knock first and make sure no one's in there. But it's like, well, he didn't hear anyone. Well, wouldn't have heard you anyway, because he was blasting the music through his headphones. So I appreciate that aspect of this episode too, like the use of music in those scenes, like the whole music sequence during Jeffro listening to it, and then the music not playing through his headphones because he doesn't have his headphones on anymore, and it's just playing throughout the scene. And we get that in the apartment as well, where that guy's listening on his headphones, the headphones get unplugged, and it's blasting throughout the actual scene. So I love the use of music in that capacity. I also love that wasn't a clean fight sequence. What I mean is he walked away banged up. It's not like, oh, he took the guy down, no problem. It's like, no, got grazed by the bullet, which I'm also like, that's probably a bad thing, because your blood's like in that place. They're in that crime scene. So I'm like, well, I'm sure there's a lot to cover up there, because like the bullet passed through him and it went through the chair that they were sitting on. But later on, Felix is there to kind of cover things up, make it seem like, well, I guess you're able to cover it up a little bit if you're able to, because they used a shotgun later on to shoot him, so that's going to destroy more of his face and head, I'm sure, so it can cover up the regular Glock that was used to, pop him. So I'm sure they still had to dig out the shell. They probably had to cover up. I mean, once again, it was a bullet that flew through the couch, so you probably had to get the casing just to kind of sell the story more. That it was like, once again, Jethro came in and killed his roommate and Tommy. You also got to give props to Eddie immediately getting spruced up and going to the party he was invited to by Stanley, which we find out he's into meth, selling meth, which are like interesting, which are also like, is that why it's like, was that after? It's one of those things where you're like, was that part written for Giancarlo Esposito, or was it just a situation of that part was already written that way, and then you just kind of did a little typecasting and put Giancarlo Esposito in that role, because he's obviously this character is not Gus Fring, but he can bring a little of that Gus Fring to the role if need be. So it's interesting. So it's like, yeah, the guy's into meth, much like the Tommy business. It's like, yeah, her family, the Glasses, stay away from everyone else's business. That's how you're able to avoid a lot of stuff. I'm curious what we get introduced to her dad this episode, but we don't know what she is like in correlation with her dad. It seems like her dad is willing to dust up with people if need be, but she seems to be the type of person that wants to avoid all-out fights. She's kind of, because her and Stanley had the whole conversation about her trying to avoid conflicts, and she's done a good job of it, but he's coming at it from the approach of, no, like, you need to change with the times. Like, things, your way, the way your father ran things was perfectly fine. It worked for a while, and obviously you've been doing a great job yourself kind of handling things while he was out of the picture, but you won't be able to keep things going at this pace. It's interesting because they had that whole back and forth of like, oh, being antiques people, and, oh, is this fake? Is it real? It makes me wonder, does Susie actually have like a degree in like antiques and stuff like that? Because she knows enough to like, it wasn't, I mean, she even guessed on this thing of like, oh, is it real or fake? And she guessed, and it's like, oh, because fakes are warm, but real watches because of the conductivity are cool. And it's like, no, maybe I just, took a 50-50 shot. I thought it was interesting, too, that whole conversation he had, too, where it's like, oh, I'm going to put this watch here. No one's going to take it because the best security is my name and reputation, so no one's going to take it. But he also kind of left it as a gift for Susie, and she was like, right, watches are for retirement, and I think your timing is off. It's like, interesting. Which there's layers to that, because it's like, oh, you're implying like my time is up and I should back away from this and let you take over things. Your timing is off. But for him, it's like, no, I think my timing is just right. You're the one that kind of missed the mark, maybe. I think that's kind of interesting. Because he kind of goes back to that point he was making last episode about, I was like, oh, you and I are the same. There are people, all those people inside, they're people inside the zoo. You and I, we're out here in the jungle, Kind of like the two different breed of people that exist. We also met a princess, which Eddie's got ties to, Rosie. She's definitely aware of, she definitely is aware of who Stanley really is, and he is a collector of aristocrats. So he seems like the type of dude, and kind of made it clear that he kind of wants to own a lot of things, very rare and precious. So I guess it's like my company and my position is something that maybe he could utilize later on, or maybe it's just, hey, it just showcases the prestigious circles that he runs in. Maybe that's what Rosie's there for, because obviously he's getting close to Eddie for the purposes of getting that property, which the Glasses are using to grow their weed and all that. Which he must have been he must have known about this for a while now. I wonder, was he just waiting for Freddie and Eddie's dad to kick the bucket? Because he immediately pounced on that the moment Eddie put it on sale. So it makes me think, like, obviously he already knew about it. Because it's like, right, you're not going to know about, even big time game like Stanley, you're not going to know about each other. Because it makes sense. You're going to not worry about people who are in a different lane. Once again, your weed, Tommy and his, like, the Gospel and all of them, they're coke, and Stanley is meth. It's like, right, they're all in their own lane. So unless it's direct competition, you're not going to look into them, because it's like, why should I care? Whoever it is, let them do their own thing. She only looked into Stanley because she saw how much Stanley was interested in them, and now she found out why. But I wonder how long. He's always known. He knows the history of that particular building and stuff like that. So he's someone that does his research as well, and it's just, how long has he, like I said, been eyeing that place? How long has he been aware of the Glasses business with Eddie's family? Or more specifically, his father. Either way, Eddie getting patched up kind of ends up bringing Susie up to date about the circumstances of the roommate. Now we got to further sell the story. Felix is doing his part to cover this whole thing up. They dump the car, dump Tommy's body and the shotgun. Jethro's gone, so it's like, yeah, makes it easier to sell. The Gospel shows up. He's not stupid, because he knows, like, yeah, where did Jethro get this gun? This gun's worth at least 200,000 pounds. How would he get it? It's like, actually, it's ours. They're admitting to it. But it's like, yeah, like, it's out in the open. He most likely snatched it while we weren't looking. I was going to tell you, obviously after you left, we realized that the gun was missing. So, and I love him being like, I can keep this, right? He's like, you wouldn't mind that, would you? And they're, no, go ahead. He's like, good. And after, like, divine punishment has been manifested or whatever, I'll return it. So it's like, that guy is batshit crazy. And it's like, has he accepted it? It seems he has his suspicions, but he's willing to let you string him along, because I guess he doesn't want to act without any proof, because he doesn't know who they're in business with, because he doesn't know about the Glasses at all. I don't think he does. So I wonder, did word get back? Because Tommy met with Susie on his own, so word probably didn't get back to the Gospel about that. So they don't know about her and her family's involvement in all of this. I wonder, is he not moving until he gets absolute proof, or does he think like, right, I can't bump off a rich family like this even with my crew because that's going to draw too much heat and attention? Maybe he's going to try and find another way. Him having the shotgun seems like that's going to be a pertinent story plot, but we'll see. I did love that conversation between Freddy and Eddie, where Freddy's like, yeah, if we make it through this, I'll owe you my life. He's like, yes, you will, Freddy. Yes, you will. You know, especially because he kept bringing up the whole how much Eddie owes him in his life and stuff. You know, so kept like lording that over Eddie for so long, and now Eddie gets to hit him with the Uno reverse. After it's all said and done, they do put Jethro on the boat. I'm like, there's no way he's going to survive, right? Like, because Susie's going to make Eddie think it's all kosher, but he's like, no, there's no way it is. And we get the end of the episode where Felix is on the boat with him. It's like, of course, they're not going to leave any loose ends because they don't want to take the chance that, you know, despite the, hey, you're going to Australia and you got 2 million quid, it's like, there's no way they're going to take that chance because it's bad for business. I mean, there's too many loose ends. You already got 2 bodies that already complicate your business enough. And yeah, once again, the gospel, you know, took the story in stride, but still, it's like, I don't know. And it'd be interesting to find out if actually killing Jethro actually complicates things and makes things worse in the grand scheme of things. Because this is, I mean, it's not even really Eddie's issue. It is Freddy's. To be fair, Eddie wanted to stop the whole thing a lot sooner. Susie's the one that told him like, hey, just let the whole Tommy and Freddy thing play out. And it's like, yeah, it kept escalating. To be fair, Eddie did like intervene, but then like Tommy kind of shut that down. But I don't know. Once again, it still is all Freddy's fault for popping off. So. And he also had the audacity this episode to still be like, yeah, I don't want to do the chicken dance, which, like, Eddie slapped the shit out of him. It's like, you murdered a dude. I'm doing whatever I can to cover for your ass. You're going to do the goddamn dance. You know? It's like he was jumping down your throat about it before. Well, we have even more motive and reason to do it now, considering, like, we're in the deep shit, you know, because of you once again. Which I also think it's probably a bad idea to tell him about the glasses business, but you did because you don't have anyone else to really confide in. But it's like, your brother's too much of an issue. In these 2 episodes alone, he's already proven himself to be a fuck up and an issue twice alone. And just we're in the first 2 episodes, you have years of history of him being a fuck up. Even your mom knows, like, oh, this all popped up because of Freddy, right? And he's like, yeah, Freddy. It's like, your mom even knows. So it's like, why would you tell him about the family business, about where all the money came? He's like, you shouldn't have told him. Because he didn't even question it until you brought it up, until you're like, oh, did you ever wonder where the money came from? He's like, oh, he didn't think about it. So that's probably going to end up being your fatal flaw. But I guess it's like, once again, outside of Susie, he needs someone else that he can work with, someone he can actually trust, because Susie's a means to an end. She's kind of like carryover from the deal with his dad that he kind of has to deal with in the aftermath of things. So, which he wants a meeting with her dad, Bobby, who's played by, was it Ray Winstone? I probably have seen him in other things, but the thing I probably most recently know him for is he was in the Black Widow movie. He was recently talking about that. I don't know if he was doing press for this show or something. I think that he was recently doing some press interviews and talking about his experience with Black Widow. But either way, he's in a very cushy prison where it's just like he's in the out and open, and he gets to have like knives as his chef like cooks up like high quality beef for him and stuff. And I love the whole bit about like, oh, you can talk in front of him because that guy, like, you know, he doesn't pay. What was it like? He minds his own business unless it's paying taxes. Am I right? And the guy just looks at him and he's just kind of like, huh, you know. I love that bit. And he also went through the trouble of telling the story about sirloins. I'm like, is that a real story or is that some bullshit he made up? Because, you know, the world is crazy, so I could definitely see that being the actual story behind why sirloin is called sirloin. Like, it legitimately got knighted, the nickname stuck, and it just became the de facto name for it. That's wild. But either way, Eddie makes his move, and it's like, okay, so I'm going to make you more money than you've ever made before, but you have to leave my property and cut out all this business after a year. Susie, not appreciative of this whole thing, because she says like, whoa, this ain't like a renegotiation type of thing. This was like a meet and greet. We kind of wet our beaks a little, rather you wet your beak a little as you and my dad kind of, suss each other out. This ain't like, oh, let's immediately get down to like some heavy duty business. But she also doesn't appreciate Eddie going behind her back, because it's like, no, you come to me first, and then we like broach this to my dad. It's like, well, it's understandable, because from a business perspective, this is her operation, and like her kind of having to act second fiddle to her dad, like him being locked away. I'm wondering like how much is it stuff that she's doing because their dad wants her to do it, and how much of it is like, no, like I'm making my own moves, so this is my operation until my dad comes back in the fold. But I'm sure it's also a means of, I've got to prove myself. If I'm able to handle this in the time frame my dad's away, that means like when it's all said and done, this will be mine. That it will be legitimately mine. My dad will be so impressed with how I handle things. He's like, okay, cool, you do that. Or maybe it is a thing of she still answers to her dad wholeheartedly and doesn't really make any moves. Maybe when it correlates to the business itself, maybe she doesn't make any moves without consulting him in some shape or form, because his word still dictates a lot. But, or maybe, like I was saying before, maybe it's just wholeheartedly her operation while he's indisposed. Even though, once again, he has so much levity and, not levity, but like so many privileges in prison that the guards just kind of like, the guy was like, oh, I'll be on time. Like, when am I ever late? He's like, you're late all the time. And they're like laughing about it. Ha ha ha. He's like, oh, if you come back on time, well, I'll have some of this meat left for you. So it's like, okay. So some very, very interesting developments. It's definitely going to be interesting to it's going to be really interesting to see ultimately where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.